everyone, and welcome to XChange, the TLX podcast for faculty by faculty. I'm Patricia Robinson, faculty facilitator with the TLX, and I'm hosting a new segment of XChange called XChange Forum, in which I interview our faculty colleagues from across the college. So I've been away from the college on a PD leave, and now that I'm back, I have a ton of questions that I want to ask faculty, but I'll just try to limit it to a few. And I know that there have been a lot of changes to teaching and learning that I've missed out on, and I want to learn more about the experiences that my peers have been having. So I've decided to invite different faculty to join me. And today I'm joined by Allison Ross, a faculty member in the Center for Health Sciences. So Allison, thanks for joining me. And maybe you can tell us a bit about your role at the college.
Sure. Hi, Patricia. Thank you so much for having me. So I have taught in the Center for Health Sciences for a little bit over 10 years, and currently I'm predominantly teaching in the practical nursing program. I've also taught in the personal support worker, pathway to practical nursing, and interprofessional complex and long-term care programs. And I'm currently coordinating the interprofessional complex and long-term care program. So that's a brand new program. It just launched in September. And so although I'm with the School of Nursing, I'm not actually a nurse. I'm a social scientist of health and medicine. My PhD is in health studies. So I predominantly teach the social science courses that complement and support the core nursing curriculum. Although every once in a while I do find myself in a math or biology or anatomy classroom.
Oh my God, like that's so interesting. So you're really teaching a large variety of different courses, and then you're also a program coordinator for a brand new program.
That's right.
And yeah, and so that actually makes me wonder, because you have those responsibilities, I'm curious about your transition to teaching fully online since the pandemic. Did you experience any challenges with making that transition?
Oh yeah, for sure. The biggest challenge I faced, I think, was just trying to find ways to build those relationships with students that would, even compare to the really strong relationships I've had with students in the past. Building that trust and rapport in the classroom, it's like the greatest challenge, but also, the greatest responsibility and joy of teaching. So, teaching online can be really just so isolating. And so I can only imagine that learning online is equally, if not more isolating for the students. So finding just creative ways to pull the students in and get them excited and motivated and curious, it's been challenging, but it's really important because, at the end of each course, I just want the students to feel that they know me and that I know them. There's a relationship there, and that they've learned something valuable that they can take forward into their healthcare practice. And so that's just a more challenging goal to achieve when we're teaching online.
Yeah, I can imagine how challenging that would be. I mean, for me as a teacher too, I find that my relationships with students are super important. And so you've mentioned finding creative ways to pull students in and get them excited and motivated and curious about what they're learning. So maybe you can share with us some strategies that you've been using and how it's going for you.
Yeah, for sure. I've actually surprisingly found that using social media has worked really, really well to help the students and I just feel more connected to each other. So what I've done is I've created a private Instagram account for each course that I teach, and then the students can request to follow along. And these accounts are linked to my GBC email address, so they're professional. They're not personal accounts. And then I invite students to follow along, and then I do promise them that I will not follow them back, so they don't have their their teacher following along with their personal lives.
Yeah, they'd probably be creeped out about that.
Exactly. I don't want to be that teacher.
Exactly. So what kind of Instagram posts do you actually make?
I post a lot of different types of content. Like there's simple things like reminders for upcoming due dates. I do 1-minute videos of me just, summarizing that week's lesson. I will share news stories that are related to what we've been learning about in the course. This semester, I've started to try to integrate some memes into the accounts. And then I also, I'll have to admit that I post a lot of pictures and videos of my pets, my cat and my dog.
Oh my God, that's so amazing. I feel like, so I have a dog too, and I would totally be posting photos of my dog in my class.
Yeah, the students seem to really enjoy, well, some of the students seem to enjoy it at least.
And so you said some of the students seem to enjoy that about the dog. How else do you know that your students are engaging with the Instagram?
Yeah, well, so they like and they comment on posts, and I actually do get a lot of DMs or direct messages from students. And so sometimes these messages I get, they're just private responses to a post if they didn't want to comment publicly. Sometimes they'll just ask questions related to the course material if they want me to, clarify a concept or something like that. And sometimes, they just are reaching out in the DMs for just some more general support. I think I would actually say that maybe about 50% of my student communication is through GBC email, and then the other 50% is actually through the Instagram DMs.
That is pretty interesting. So do you check your Instagram every day?
Oh yeah, constantly throughout the day, just to make sure I don't miss anything.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So in terms of those private responses from your students, what might be an example of a message you would get?
I get a lot of messages about the dog, and students will actually send me a picture of their dog, so it seems to be something we're bonding over. But I get a lot of questions that are just asking for clarification sometimes about assignment details. So, for example, if a student, for whatever reason, is not able to find the instructions for an assignment or the rubric on Blackboard, I will discuss it privately with them on Instagram. Sometimes students share, that they're really loving a course, or sometimes they tell me they're feeling super overwhelmed. And so it's also worked out as a really great place to just gather feedback and then use that feedback to make some positive change in the courses.
That's a really smart idea. And so you mentioned Blackboard, and so you're using Blackboard, and then you're also using Instagram. So how do you kind of integrate those two things together?
Yeah, that was something that I put a lot of thought into at the beginning because when I started using the Instagram accounts, I really wanted to make sure that students who, for whatever reason, aren't comfortable using social media, or maybe they're just not interested in social media, I didn't want those students to be left out. So anytime that I post something on Instagram, like a reminder of a due date or sharing a news story, I also make sure to send that out through Blackboard. And then in terms of sharing the videos of myself talking about the course and all that pet related content, I make sure that I upload a weekly video to Blackboard just so that everyone is feeling included in that social exchange. So I mean, it's really just been about diversifying the ways in which we connect with the students. I'm trying to use multiple platforms so that students can choose what works best for them where they're at.
I think that's a really thoughtful way to approach how you're designing your classes. So, and especially now that we're all isolated, making those connections with students can be even more difficult when we can't spend time with them in person.
For sure.
Yeah, it sounds like your strategies are pretty effective.
Thank you.
And actually, this leads to my next question. So can you share, or would you be comfortable sharing, what have you been learning about yourself as a teacher?
Oh gosh, I've learned so much. Most importantly, though, I've realized, I think I always knew, but I really realized how much my relationships with students matters to me. I think that, I've learned that that energy that we derive from being in a classroom together is so important. And so it's just been hard work trying to find different ways to create that energy and create that connection, not only between me and the students, but also amongst the students.
So that's pretty amazing. So, you knew that beforehand, and now you've realized that it is super important for you, and you're trying to find these ways to make those connections, and that you're actually are finding ways to recreate this in an online way.
Trying to.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And it's great that you're taking that initiative to try out different things. So I'm going to ask my next question, which is, what have you learned about the students?
Well, I think with online learning, we've all been reminded of the diversity of our students. So, in their learning styles, their capacity for change, comfort with technology. But we've also learned a lot more about the disparities in access to various resources. So, for example, who has access to the necessary equipment to learn online? Who has access to a quiet space, or who's caring for children who are also learning online? And then, unique to our nursing program, so many of our students are frontline healthcare workers right now. There's many personal support workers. And so they're stretched to their absolute max right now during this pandemic. So I just feel that it's our responsibility as their teachers to be open to learning about their unique circumstances and then working collaboratively with them so that they can reach their goals.
That's really amazing. So you're actually teaching some of the students who are working on the front lines of this pandemic.
Yeah. Yep.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is.
And what has that meant for you as a teacher?
Well, it means that I have to be adaptable. I have to be creative in how I deliver the courses. So for example, I've decided to blend synchronous and asynchronous strategies so that the learners can move along on their own time and at their own pace. So to do that, what I do is every Monday, I upload the weekly module, and that is released at 8 a.m. and it has a full audio narration. So basically, I record what I would have said if we were all in the classroom together. So that would also include things like discussion questions and questions for reflection that I encourage students to, pause on and consider. And then what I do is I run occasional Blackboard Collaborate sessions that are optional so that students can still choose to benefit from that real-time interaction if that's helpful to them.
Okay, so right, so your students, a lot of them are working, or they've got families, they've got maybe students who are also learning online. And so you're providing them with these options so they can go through the course at their own pace.
Exactly.
And then using these Blackboard Collaborate sessions. Mm-hmm. So what's your attendance like, would you say, in your Blackboard Collaborate sessions?
So last semester, it was pretty good. What I would do for the week that I was offering a Blackboard Collaborate session, I'd offer 2 different times during that week so that students could attend whichever session fits best with their schedule. And then I would just make sure to record both sessions so that the students, if for whatever reason they didn't attend either, they could still go onto Blackboard and watch the video. And so I think that offering multiple times for students to attend really helped to increase the attendance.
Right. And so we're just at the beginning of the semester now. So is that something you're going to do again this semester?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
So it sounds like the way you have your classes set up, you're really supporting an accessible learning environment for your students.
I mean, yeah, that's the hope, at least. That's the intention. Some students seem to prefer the synchronous learning, others prefer asynchronous learning. So I'm just kind of hoping that by blending the 2 strategies together, I can address the needs of as many students as possible.
Right. So speaking about your students, what is something that has really stood out for you about them since the pandemic began?
Well, I've definitely learned how resilient and versatile they are. I can't imagine having, started a new program or being in the midst of a post-secondary program and just, having the rug pulled out from under me, being forced not only to learn the new concepts and theories and skills, but also learning how to learn online. I'm so impressed by their ability to adapt and then, really thrive given these challenges.
It is pretty amazing. When we think about our students and what they're able to do, I don't know that I could do it either.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, even related to the students having to learn how to learn online, many of us as teachers have had to learn how to teach online. And so, and I mean, there's a different learning curve for everybody, but in that process, I'm sure for everyone, we've all made some mistakes and hopefully we're learning from them as we go along. Mm-hmm. Allison, would you feel comfortable sharing any mistakes that you've made with us?
Oh, Patricia, I don't make mistakes. No.
I know, me neither.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, there are so many times that I make mistakes. I'm constantly messing up. One thing that happens a lot when I'm recording the narration for lesson modules is that I mess up or I get tongue-tied or I completely forget what I was going to say. And then instead of deleting those moments and re-recording them so that they sound perfect, I often just leave them in there and I kind of laugh about it. And one time that comes to mind when I was doing this, I was sitting near a window in my house recording a lesson when my dad decided to come by my house for an impromptu visit. Now, instead of ringing the doorbell like, a polite, normal person might do, he just started yelling through the window. He was like, Allison, Allie, sweetie, honey. Yeah. And so obviously that translated onto the recording. And instead of stopping the recording, I just left it in there and told the students to, hold on, my impatient father has just showed up unannounced. And then, I just laugh at the situation, tell them a little bit about the pros and cons of living too close to your parents. And then at the end of the day, it only adds an extra 30 seconds or so to the whole module. But the students kind of get like a blooper reel for the lesson. So I think that just makes it more real and true to life in terms of what might actually happen when you're teaching live and face to face. So, the recordings, they don't have to be perfect, but I do try to keep them authentic and vulnerable.
I think that is so hilarious that your dad just came by and was like yelling through the window.
Yeah. Yep.
So how did he respond when you told him that you were in the middle of recording a lesson?
Oh, he didn't care at all. Doesn't care.
Oh my God. Does he live pretty close to you?
Well, so it's like a 20-minute walk, but it's only about a 3-minute drive. So it might be a little too close.
It's maybe a little too close. How did your students respond when those little bloopers happen?
Well, so every once in a while, I'll get an email from students who are, having similar challenges working from home, and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, I just heard your dad, my dad does the same thing," or the spouse is working from home at the same time, or
Or the pets.
yeah, the pets, the children. So we all kind of, share our frustrations.
That's awesome. So what advice would you give to other faculty teaching online based on what you've been learning over the last however many months?
That's a good question. I would say don't be afraid to be vulnerable with students. Admit that you're learning too. Celebrate that we're in this together. Try something new. Let them know that it's new, and then just laugh at yourself if it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important, actually, letting them know that it's new, so that you're not going to be perfect, and also it might not be a perfect learning situation for them as well, but that we're going to learn from that mistake and continue on.
Exactly.
And it sounds like you're open to trying out new things.
Mm-hmm. Always.
So can you think of, off the top of your head, something that you would like to try out that you haven't yet?
Oh, something I'd like to try out. That's a really good question. Okay, I have one. With Blackboard Collaborate, I really want to use it to its full functionality. So last semester, it felt just like a little bit of a scramble to get on there and just figure it out and make it work. And so I was really, So I was really using it really at its basic level. And so I'm looking forward to using this semester to get a bit more creative with it and, try out some of the other features. Like I really want to get better at using the polling questions more effectively. That's one of my goals.
That's a good goal. I think that's a good plan to try out those things, try out new things.
Yeah.
And so you know what that means is that you're going to have to meet with me again and let me know how it goes.
Okay, absolutely. I would love that.
Okay, perfect. So I just want to thank you, Allison, for sharing with us what you've been doing and learning, and I really look forward to chatting with you again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Patricia. This was fun.
It was fun. So until next time.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.